Hey,
Hey, your mic was a little weird there.
how's it going? Sorry, yeah, I've been my computer just locked up as I was locking onto this.
Oh, that's not good. Like it froze?
Yeah, it's kind of struggling with running OBS and streaming and everything else.
Time to come over to Linux. A better performance. It's not gonna crash as much if you're dealing with crashing or freezing.
Yeah, you know what? I think you'd like my brother. My brother's building me a computer currently. It's gonna be Windows, but you know.
Yeah. I'm not into the whole infinitely being having my data harvested and having my computer bloated with Candy Crush and other trash and having a start menu that simply closing and opening it repeatedly brings your CPU usage to 100%. Like Windows is just trash. I think that it just has some kind of inertia and some kind of staying. I don't even know what values are guiding development at this point. I just have no idea. But over here in Linux land, we got freedom, we got liberty. It's pretty good. There's some good values over here.
What does it
Um,
look like
then
to
there's
interact
also
with?
Apple. Sorry,
Yeah, I've never really gone with the Apple
no,
desktop.
Apple is horrible.
Right, okay. What does Linux
It's
look
nice.
like to interact with those?
I'll just say about Apple. Apple, the values are more like Apple does have good hardware and some good software, but the thing with Apple is Apple's values are like wrap you in a multi-level walled garden of hardware and software that only works with itself and then infinitely siphon money off of you. And also
Right.
Apple users are just cringe. Like they like little flashy, fancy looking things, but yeah, they're like corporate marketing victim peons.
Yeah, I mean the
Linux
lock-in
looks however
thing.
you want.
Yeah, the lock-in thing you can kind of tell from iPhone where you don't seem to be able to stop it giving you a notification saying that you need to upgrade, but you need more space, and therefore you have to pay for their monthly storage thing or whatever. Like, yeah.
Yeah, they try to embed you further and further into the ecosystem, and the further you get in, the harder it is to dig yourself out. In Windows, they'll upgrade your OS. Like, hey, here's the new OS. By the way, it like doesn't run on the old hardware. So you literally they just like make your computer a brick with respect to the new OS. So you can either like have to buy a whole ton of new hardware, or at least a piece of new hardware, or just remain on the old version that isn't getting serviced anymore. And it's just none of this is a thing on Linux. And you asked what Linux looks like and feels like. It looks and feels however you want. If you want Linux to be like Windows, you can make it like Windows. If you want it to be like Mac, you can make it like Mac. And if you want it to be significantly better than both, just like minimal, clean, snappy, fast, you can achieve that. It's just very it is what you want it to be. It gives you freedom to create the system that works for you aesthetically, functionally, everything. No more getting siphoned off of by these companies, no more having your system bloated with trash, no more shit spying on you. You're just free from the bullshit, plus better performance, plus necromancer perk. So you have some old system that's like literally dead and like hasn't been able to run anything Windows related for like a decade. Yeah, it'll run Linux just fine.
Oh,
So
okay.
yeah.
Damn. All right. Well, I've got a new Windows computer on the way, so you know.
Yep. You know my recommendation. Well, actually, if it's not obvious, my recommendation is to dual boot that system. So it is a Windows Linux split system. Work towards recreating your system in Linux while having Windows as a fallback so that you
Mhm.
don't have any situation where you actually can't get work done. But yeah, then once you hit or get near feature parity, you're never going to want to be on Windows again. And then you'll at some point realize you just haven't been in the Windows partition for like a year or two, and you'll be like, oh, I may as well just delete that partition and reclaim the disk space.
Fair play. All right. Well, maybe I will do that. It sounds like it's going to be a lot of work, and I'm not sure if I can handle that much freedom.
Um, yeah, well, I mean, people have different values. My view is basically that people who aren't on Linux are just getting cucked and don't realize how. And you can realize how and save yourself from it, or you can remain an ignorant cuck.
Well, I've been destroyed by Ask Yourself. Um,
Sorry.
Good
I'm kidding.
stuff.
If it's not obvious, I
Yeah, I got
believe
you.
the things I'm saying, but I don't think you're a cuck though.
Sure. Not for that, at least. Um,
Yeah, or anything else I'm aware of, unless you actually just identify as a cuck or something. In which case, that's actually fine.
in which
I think
case, that's
being
valid.
unintentionally, yeah, being unintentionally a cuck at something you're not doing cuck as a fetish for is bad. But if you actually are just a literal cuck, I mean, you do you.
Maybe I have a fetish for getting cooked by Microsoft.
You have not heard of that one before, but it's possible. It might be out there. Might be able to find some porn associated with that. You'd have to troll the internet.
Yeah, if I can ever load it. Um, well, I messaged you a couple of days ago with some vague sort of thoughts about some ideas that we might chat about, mainly
Sure.
around
Are we live currently?
Oh yeah, sorry, I should have said that at the start. Yeah. Sorry, we are. I'm on
That's
YouTube.
okay.
Yeah. We didn't
No worries.
say anything rude. Um,
Okay.
yeah. So, and this is sort of like a cluster of ideas that I have around the theme of responsibility. Um,
hmm
and I guess I said to you, here we go. This is my message to you the other day. One idea I keep
I
coming
read
back
it
to.
and remember it. Yeah.
Oh, nice. Yeah.
Oh,
Um,
sorry. Are you doing it for the audience? Yeah. Sorry. Go ahead. Yeah.
yeah. Let me do it for the. Yeah.
I remember it though. Yeah.
Okay, nice. One idea I keep coming back to is about individuals taking responsibility. For example, do you ask yourself, regard yourself as having a greater amount of responsibility given that you have a good sized platform, you're good at thinking and public speaking, etc.? I said I'd love to communicate to vegans that as individuals we have a responsibility to do more activism. And then there's also, I said I have the feeling that animal orgs with nice logos and websites, necessary as they are, can give the wrong impression that we've got this. When we really need scrappy individuals to volunteer, advocate, and give to charity. Any like reactions off the bat from that?
Um. Well, I can't say I've thought a whole lot about responsibility in like I have in a sense like there's there's things I really think you shouldn't do if you have a platform. Like if you have a bunch of people listening to you, for instance, a one that gets talked about a lot for years now is like platforming people. I don't think that you should have someone on who's got like if you I mean just an obvious case like some like really strong like Nazi debater or something. Like you for instance Nick Fuentes, not a strong debater, but you know, persuasive rhetorically, you'd have to know a certain amount of stuff to actually like hold it down and make him look like a retard, like someone like Avi has easily done.
Mm-hmm.
But it would, you know, some I think there would be a base I think that you have an obligation to not like let people like that basically co-opt your platform to promote like Nazism or something. So I guess I've thought more about responsibilities in a like negative way, like things that you shouldn't do. When it comes to positive obligations, I don't know. Like I guess I think I kind of think that you're neutral if you're neutral, and anything else on top of that is good. Is it good to do more activism? Yeah. Are you morally obliged to do more activism? Then I'm kind of like, well, what the fuck? What exactly do we mean by moral obligation? I'm not totally sure. I don't know. So I'm not sure if that gives you enough. And then the second part was about some other stuff. I don't know if we want to go into that yet.
Well, I guess we can split it. Obligation and responsibility are the same sort of category of thing, I suppose, right? If you have a responsibility, you're obliged.
Yeah.
Um,
Is it just do we just mean we have a really fucking strong preference for this thing? Because I think that's how because I feel like I'm more comfortable using words like obligation negatively, like even in what I just said, right? Like I used it in the negative sense without much hesitation.
mm,
But when we started thinking about positive obligation, I started wondering more like, well, what exactly do we mean? I guess there's things that are more uncontroversially going to be obligations, as in like on greater amount of notions of obligation, these things are going to be obligations. So maybe it's kind of maybe that's why I'm more ready to use the term on negative things. But yeah, if an obligation is just something like an extremely strong preference to a point that we would feel like disdain for someone who doesn't do that thing, I don't really feel like that about doing basically any positive shit for anything. Like I don't feel like
Mm.
you I don't feel like it's good to make the world better, and you're like being neutral. I don't know. I'm not sure exactly what to say about that. I just maybe you can get something out of what I'm saying though. Like I feel more
Yeah.
strongly about it negatively. I'm not sure what I want to say about positive obligations.
Is
I
this?
don't like. I don't. Sorry.
No, sorry. Go ahead.
No, no. You go ahead. It's fine.
Oh, I was going to say, is this what's called supererogatory, where it's sort of not quite the opposite of obligatory, but it's like going above and beyond or something like that.
Isn't supererogatory when something supererogatory? Isn't that when something is um good but not an obligation?
I guess so. Super
So I definitely think that
supererogatory.
yeah, we can look it up. I
Yeah.
I definitely think that doing vegan activism is good. I mean that should be obvious. Like of course I think it's good. But calling it an obligation or calling it supererogatory, those are both saying where it sits with respect to obligations. Like it's not an obligation, it is an obligation.
Mm.
I don't know. I don't have strong feelings about obligations in a positive sense here. I'm open to being kind of talked into it. It's just not an angle I've thought a lot about, and I don't immediately have any inclination to say that something is an obligation, except certain things that are obviously bad. I want to say like you're definitely obliged not to do those things.
Mm. Mm. So the other part that I'm finding kind of interesting thinking about this is then like extent of obligation and or extent of responsibility. And as I said in the message to you, you've got however many subscribers you've got on YouTube, and you're a good speaker and thinker and debater and so on. And so maybe given all of those things, if we do have some sort of obligation in this direction, people with more abilities might have greater obligations. And you could think about, I'm kind of thinking of this as I go now, so might not be quite fluent, but you could think about the negative case of that, where if somebody is like mentally handicapped, for example, such that they lack the ability to observe some normal kind of social etiquette about not putting your elbows on the table or whatever it may be, we kind of don't think that they're necessarily obliged to follow that because they lack the ability.
Yeah, but someone who can, we have an expectation there. Um, yeah, well, I mean, I definitely agree. It's obvious someone is not obliged to do a thing that they're just like incapable. Well, what do we mean by obliged though? Because if by obliged we just mean we have a really strong preference for them to do it, then maybe on that notion they are going to be obliged. But like, I don't know. I don't. When I see someone who's like mentally disabled, who's not, and that's leading to some kind of like frustrating or bad, some behavior that'd be like annoying or bad if someone else did it. Oh, I don't know. It really is going to depend what we mean by obligation. Like, of course, I have a preference for them not to do that thing. I'd rather not have the bad thing happen. But I also don't really, at the level of their character, judge them that
Mm-hmm.
much or at all, really, because they don't understand. So maybe we also want to talk about kind of like separating characters and action a little bit. But I
Yeah,
don't know. Sorry, I don't have very like I don't have really views about this. So I'm sort of similar to where you're at. Like I don't know. I can spitball, but it's not like if you ask me something that I've spent a lot of time thinking about, where I'm gonna have like
yeah,
good
yeah.
thought
No,
through answers. So I guess the
no,
audience
that's
should take
fine.
it with a heavy grain of salt. See if you can think of something better for yourself. Because I've not thought a lot about this.
Fair enough. Yeah, good disclaimer. And so, I mean, the thing that I'd written down in my notes to say to you is, on one hand, you are just a guy, and if you don't have, you don't seem to have on the face of it any special responsibility, or let's assume that you're not starting with some special responsibility, or that you don't currently have. You, if you wanted to decide to sack this off and go snowboarding for the rest of your life, you could. Um, and yet, can't help feeling that if you did that, it would be such a loss to potential numbers of animals that could have been saved and so on, that I almost want to say that you do have some sort of obligation. But it also seems that I'm using you as sort of example case here, but you can think about other cases. you can't really. I can't oblige you to do it, right? I can't make you do it. I might feel that you have an obligation to do it, but I suppose there's also something about like a social obligation versus, uh, certainly a legal obligation, right? I'm sure there's other forms that we might think of.
Yeah. Um. mm,
Like, for example, I mean, yeah, I mean, if you think about like maybe Joey Carbstrong is a good example to say because he's like so into it, you can't really imagine him not being into it, right? But let's say that he woke up one morning and said, oh, I can't bother with this anymore. I'm still going to be vegan, but I'm just going to, I can't bother making content or whatever. I'm just going to stop reaching however many 100,000 people, It would seem we're going to then be on a path where there's that many more animals being killed and so on, right?
Yeah, but what are we like? I agree, it's a loss, but what are we trying to get to? Like, I just feel like really, if we want to have a conversation, if what's really important to you is whether we want to apply the word obligation, I think we just need to talk clearly about what obligation means, and then look at the cases. Like, I can do the vague, intuitive kind of passover, but I'm not locking in on a particular sense of the term. I'm just spitting out like, I don't know, little like fleeting thoughts about it. Like, if we really wanna ask that question systematically, we have to start formulating like what we mean by obligation.
Okay.
And I'm not saying it has to. I'm not saying we have to. The question isn't necessarily resolved by definition. Like, I'm not saying.
Yeah.
Just, I think we need to have enough clarity on what we mean, that like, if you have too, if what an obligation is too open for interpretation,
Hmm.
and it's not clear what the fuck is an obligation. That just applies to anything. If what a dog is like insanely open for or I don't know what word I use, but then you have it's like, how do you tell what the fuck a dog is? So I'm not saying you need to dial it in to a point that you can, like, I don't know, like, perfectly class everything, but we need to like shrink down the space a bit so it's kind of more clear what we're talking about. And that might go a long way to answer the question. It might be that once we clear up what we mean, that either does answer the question or makes it like way more approachable, and we sort of know what empirical things we want to look at to ask if something's an obligation.
Hmm. Yeah. It's going to depend on your notion of obligation, basically, or your notion of responsibility. I mean, perhaps that is, if it is a matter of sort of what degree of preference that represents, perhaps it is, um, perhaps it is subjective and unique to each person. Some people might say that it is an obligation, and some people might say that it's not. I guess that
Well,
is.
that's just using wait, are we just using different senses of the term there, though? Because what we want to ask is, for some particular sense, whatever like you might mean by obligation when you ask the question, for instance,
Hmm.
is something an obligation? We don't want to go, well, on, like, it is and isn't an obligation because in one sense it is and in the other it isn't. Like, that's not a real tension. That's like just a semantic thing. Um, yeah,
Uh,
like, what I mean, what do you think you mean when you say something's an obligation?
yeah. Well, I'm just thinking with respect to your question is do we just mean a strong preference? And I know this goes into uh, what we say moral anti-realism, right? And your view is essentially that morals boil down to preferences, right?
Well, I'm yeah. So it's correct that I'm an anti-realist, and I'm going to be, if your notion of obligation isn't compatible with anti-realism, we'll have a deeper issue to deal with. But there's a whole ton of different notions that are all available to the anti-realist. So it's not like anti-realism dials you into like a specific notion of
Mm.
obligation.
My feeling is that the um if it is a case of like where one draws the line on this continuous scale of preference, and beyond a certain point, we're going to say it's actually an obligation. Um,
Mhm.
then, I mean, is this, not that I would necessarily want this to be the case, but just sort of conceptually, is there some room there for people to have just differing points where they draw the line, and still be talking about
What do we
roughly the
mean
same?
by different?
Well, you could still be talking about roughly the same thing, right? But it's just going to be the case that one person might say, "I think that is an obligation," and the other might say it's not, even though we're talking about the same sort of dimension of what an obligation would be.
It's gonna depend on if the point you dial it into on the spectrum is actually part of the definition of obligation or not. Like if you define obligation such that there's some kind of spectrum to it, like light intensity or something like that, then like everywhere along the spectrum is just has some level of light intensity associated with it or something. You might have a concept like that. But if you bake into the concept of obligation a certain threshold, then you'll not be able to say that different things on the spectrum are both obligations for what, because two different people have different kind of like thresholds of what they care about or something like that, because we've defined obligations such that it just corresponds to the one threshold.
Okay, yeah. I see what you mean.
Yeah.
I think I see what you mean. Yeah. So if it's like beyond,
Want me to be clarifying? Yeah.
oh yeah, go on.
Yeah, there's you could define a concept that has to do with a spectrum, and that concept may or may not have baked into it being at a specific place on the spectrum. If you have that baked into it, then, you know, if you have one person who's got, I don't know, if you have two people with two different thresholds, one of them, let's just use obligation, one of them saying it's an obligation, one isn't, but we've defined the word obligation so that it has a specific threshold associated with it. Well, then there's like one of those people is right and the other is wrong, assuming one of them is talking about that threshold point. They're not both wrong. There's probably a more concise way to say this, but you can have a concept like what's like, you know, let me think of how to be a bit more clear about this.
Can I suggest an example? You can tell me if I'm on the right tracks.
Sure.
You might have like, actually, this is a good example. Like how loud a party is allowed to be. Like beyond a certain point, your neighbours are allowed to call the police, but then it's on a spectrum, and you know, different neighbours might disagree about how loud is too loud.
It's a great example.
Is that good? Okay, good.
Yeah.
Good.
An even simpler one is just get rid of the too loud. Let's just talk about loud. What constitutes loud? So two people might have different thresholds. One might say like 50 decibels. One might say 60. But they're okay. Sorry, just let me get my thoughts together. Yeah, right. You have one person who says it's loud at 50 decibels, one person who says it's loud at 60 decibels, and the question is who's correct? And if you have a notion of loudness that is tied to a specific point, then you can have a case where one person is correct and the other person is incorrect.
Yeah.
I'm just thinking about the other case though. Sorry, my mind's a bit fried.
That's okay.
So yeah, I'd have to think about the way to articulate exactly what I'm trying to say, but maybe we can just bring it back to home base. Like with all of these things, the point is just here's an easy thing that we can say about it, because I'm kind of trying to make a further point, and I'm not exactly sure how to articulate it, but the basic thing we can say is that you might get an answer to whether something is loud or not by definition, that given that definition, you say a certain person is correct about what loudness is, and you say a certain other person is wrong about what loudness is, or whether a given thing is loud or not. But I mean, is this just going to be the case with whatever definition? Could you make a concept where you could make a concept that in some way like involves their subjectivity or something, but Yeah, I don't know what the fuck I'm
Mm,
saying. There's a definition for loud and something either meets that definition or not.
yeah.
So I don't know what the fuck I'm trying to say here. Like with
I,
obligation, it's the same thing. It's like you define it in a certain way. And this is why I'm kind of saying like you need to sort of ask what you mean by
yeah.
obligation. You because that's gonna yeah, that gives us necessary framing for answering questions about what is or isn't an obligation.
I got you. I got
Is
you.
the question like whether two things can be an obligation at once on the same notion or something like that?
No, I think that was a helpful clarification as to just like I'm not sure exactly what my question was. It was something about like is it legitimate? Um, I guess you've just said it basically could boil down to like different people could have subjective thresholds for what they consider to be loud or obligatory or whatever it may be.
Hmm?
And or there could also be like some objective threshold where now the police are going to turn up outside my house with their sound measuring device and say, okay, it's 55 decibels, and therefore, right, whatever it may be. So there's some correct answer there. I guess that in the case
But
of
even
oh, go on.
there's always a correct answer, right? Like you define the concept and it's just either loud or not. It's just like
Hmm.
with morality. Like this person means this by good, this person means that by good. On this notion of goodness, it's moral. On that one, it's not. It's the
Hmm.
same thing with this. It's the same thing with any concept.
Okay, yeah. So I think in the analogy to responsibility or obligation, um, the to swap out the units that we'd use to measure, right? We're not going to measure in decibels anymore, but we're going to measure in something like utils or whatever, like harm cause, something like that.
Sure.
Um,
Hmm.
and then I suppose you would say, or you could say, if there is a sufficient amount of harm caused of rights violations, whatever it may be, associated with some particular thing, then beyond that point, we're going to say it's obligatory. Would that be
Yeah,
how
and
you?
then that you've got a notion. According to that notion, you can say whether some given thing is obligatory or not. Yes.
Okay, yeah. And well, it's then very difficult to ask, isn't it? Like, what's the 55 decibel tier? Like, what's the level of harm reduction or whatever?
Yeah, but thinking clearly about this shows you what you're actually trying to do when you say that though. Like what like if we just mean the point at which you have a really strong preference against it, it's just that's some like introspective journey for you to go on basically.
Hmm. Hmm. Um.
Like there's not a right answer to what's too loud. There's not a right answer to what's there's not a stance independent answer, right? Too loud is it's like a judgment about the thing. It's relative to someone's point of view.
Yeah.
Unless again, like it just fucks it's how you define it. Like if you dial in the notion with respect to someone's point of view, you can say something is loud or not with respect to that, or moral or not with respect to it. Same I mean it's yeah, it's just it's always like that. But
Mm.
if you ask, hey, here's two notions of loudness, which is the correct notion, there's not a correct notion in a stance independent way. There's just two notions. What would it mean for one to be correct over the other? Correctness is just with respect to a stance.
Mm. Mm. Um. Okay. So I think here. So I think this is the direction then. Um. Or actually, there's another kind of part to this as well. So I was about to go on to say if it's the case that activism will help or save or whatever, however you want to put it, many more animals than veganism, and it's the case that veganism is obligatory, and it's the case that the obligatory scale is sort of corresponds to the amount of suffering prevented, then it would have to be the case that the activism is going to be obligatory, right?
We'd have to write out that exact argument, but if I'd have to see that exactly. Sorry, I'm not sure if that's the case.
Okay, yeah.
You're
So
what's how's the argument run? It's like if it's over this level, it's like you can make something like that work and be like if it's over
yeah.
this level of harm, then it's an obligation. This thing is over that level of harm, so it's an obligation. But we'd have to set it up and be careful with it because you might generate a thing where there's like a whole ton of obligations, none of which could any individual meet or like something like that. I don't know.
Hmm.
You might not want a consequence like that.
Well,
You
if I
just
write this
define it in
out, will
terms
I
of
bring it
some
into being and then
maybe.
I'll
We'll see.
unleash some unintended consequences. Um, I don't know if
I
you.
I want to ask you why this is important to you though. Why is a question like this important? Because for me, a question like this is all like I find it like kind of like it's fine talking to you about it, but I find it kind of like boring almost and uninteresting. I'm not sure like what we get out of answering it. Like what's the point of something like this? Who
Yeah, it's a fair
cares, I
question.
guess.
Um,
Yeah.
I think it started from I'm just I guess I'm just thinking about um, the notion of responsibility is what I started thinking about this, and we all feel that we have some amount of responsibility to do the right thing, and then there's where do you draw the line, and so on. Um, and now I'm thinking I'd like to sort of sense check the argument that maybe activism is more obligatory than veganism.
More obligatory than veganism? You
Yeah,
mean activism plus veganism is more obligatory than veganism? Because presumably we would say that given a choice of being a like carnist fucking activist for veganism versus like just being a vegan, probably we'd prefer someone be a vegan
see, I'm
and
not
do
so
vegan
sure.
activism but not be a vegan.
I think it's going to depend
Really?
on. Yeah, I think it's good. And actually, this is an interesting disagreement to have because I think this is for me. It would depend on. We're basically talking about like one set of abstract actions that will, hurt or help X number of animals, and another set of abstract actions that will help or hurt Y number of animals. And if Y is bigger than X, then that one, then the second set's better than the first set, right? I mean, if
Yeah,
it
that's
is,
fair. I see what you mean. That's reasonable.
yeah. So I think the obligation
Yeah,
thing is like
sure.
something like, so I'm gonna write this out to try and be sort of precise about it. Oh,
Yeah.
you can watch me struggle to formulate this. You can watch the YouTube stream, by the way, if you want to see what's going on the screen. Um,
Oh, sure.
let me link it to you in Discord.
Got it. It's good.
Oh, you got it. Nice.
Yep.
Um, so it's like, let's see. Actions are obligatory to the extent that they. I'm going to put reduce suffering, but you can substitute in whatever your preferred normative framework. Which is in they reduce suffering, and I was also I want to say, effective vegan activism reduces suffering to a greater extent than, let's say, personally observing veganism. And we have the idea then personally observing veganism is obligatory, let's say. Or is this going to get weird with obligatory to the extent, and then I'm saying, or like past the line of obligatory?
Well, no, part of why I didn't have trouble agreeing there is because you gave reasoning that at least to me it sounded like it was going to not matter what word you substitute in for obligatory.
Okay, yeah. And so then these three give
You for with
us.
anything you can make an.
Have I lost connection, or did we just stop talking at the same time?
um
Oh no, we did. Okay.
oh no, I was giving you room to talk. No, like because anytime you can make a fortiori argument. I don't know if I'm saying that correct. A fortiori, yeah. But the point is like if X qualifies, then Y definitely qualifies because Y
Mm,
has the thing that qualifies X to a stronger degree. Like if I'm tall and I don't know, some fucking basketball player's got to be tall. Like if I'm 6'2" and he's 6'8" or something, right? Because tallness
right.
is determined by it's determined by your height, whether you're tall or not, and I qualify as tall and he is taller. So you can with things like that, that could be with obligatory, that you could just substitute in any word and an argument like that will work.
Yeah, that makes sense. That makes
Let's see what
sense.
you've written. Actions are yeah, no, I might disagree with some part of it though. Like actions are obligatory to the extent that they reduce suffering. I don't really agree with that. Vegan activism reduces suffering to a greater extent than personally observing veganism. Yeah, I think so. I don't know exactly how. I mean, it's logically possible. I don't know how easy it is to do effective activism while not being a vegan? I mean, I guess maybe a lot of people don't
That's a
end up
fair point.
asking if you're vegan or not. Yeah. But that too seems plausible to me. Like you can like if I mean you're compare like say that you dedicate your whole life to creating at least two vegans or something like that. Like you can
Yeah.
probably create more vegans than you can probably create a greater there's a bigger ceiling on it. You can only do so much consumption reduction yourself. There's more room to make an impact by persuading other people. So if you do that well, you can do more like that. So I like two seems like I assume two is true. Like if yeah, because effective activism just means a whole like what is really effective activism? That's just you make a whole ton of people vegan, and obviously a whole ton of people going vegan has more impact than you going vegan.
Yeah, I think the effective
Personally
tells me here,
observing
right? So
veganism.
it's defining that you're doing
Sorry,
something that is impactful. The effective is important, I guess.
I'm not sure I follow. Sorry, again.
Just the word effective is important in this second
Oh
second premise, because otherwise
yeah,
it's like, well, who knows, right?
Sure. Yeah. You well we have I might not exactly be dialing in with what you mean, but it matters what our I don't know. It matters what our words mean generally, but effective activism reduces to a greater extent than personally observing. Like all I'm thinking here is like if effectiveness is how many people it makes vegan, you can make more vegans by going out and doing activism than just going yourself vegan. There because
Yeah,
the
100%.
latter is hard capped at one.
Yes,
The
exactly.
former is just you. In principle, it could be if effective enough veganism is just like you or activism is just you say something and everyone instantly goes vegan.
Right.
So yeah, personally observing veganism is obligatory. Yeah, again, I don't know exactly what we mean by obligatory, but like I'm inclined to agree with this because I think it's the kind of thing that like across a whole ton of different notions of obligatory, um it's a veganism is going to be.
Hmm.
So I'm like pretty friendly to three even without knowing exactly how we're dialing in obligatory, just because it'll hold over a large range of notions of
We'll go
obligatory.
back to one, I
Then
guess.
four is
But go on four.
uh I don't know if it comes back to one, but it just comes down to what we mean in both one and two when we talk about the word obligatory. But
Hmm.
I'm being there's a lot of times when you get a case where it's like, look, there's a whole ton of notions, but they all kind of converge on X, and those are easier to agree on without knowing the notion. But then there's cases where it's like, there's a lot of variance you get in the answer to this thing based on the notion that you use, and then it gets more important to know what the notion is with some detail. And then four is the conclusion. Effective vegan activism is obligatory to a greater. Yeah, right. So this is, I mean, you'd have to do a little tiny bit of tweaking to make it like formally valid, but this is going
Hmm.
to easily translate to something formally valid. So I don't have any problem with the validity of the argument.
Nice.
And then it's just really premise one. I don't accept premise one. Actions are obligatory to the extent that they reduce suffering. Well, no, I don't know about the to the extent language. Like I don't know if I think yeah, I'm not I guess I don't feel confident about one, but I would grant some like modified version of one where it's like something is obligatory if it's like
Yeah.
past some certain threshold of being
Yeah. If it
negative.
reduces suffering to a sufficient extent, basically.
I don't know if it's about suffering reduction or eliminating your own personal contribution. Like I don't like I'm not a utilitarian. I don't think like a utilitarian.
Mm.
So
Yeah.
I don't know I don't feel comfortable with one. I know that there's cases where if you are personally generating enough suffering, you absolutely are obliged to stop. I'm very comfortable saying things like that. But I don't know if I'm comfortable saying that it's sorry, it really comes down to if you are the source of the suffering to me. That is like very important to me. There'll be utilitarians who like don't care about this kind of stuff, but
Yeah.
to me it's just like look, it's good if I want to go and prevent like someone else from doing a bad thing, but it's necessary that I don't do it. Like that's sort of the kind of way I'm inclined to think. So, given that I'm sort of not comfortable with one.
Okay, that's really interesting to have like pinpointed that point, because this is a disagreement that I find myself knocking up against in different vegan communities and thinking, oh, aren't we all utilitarians here? But I guess that's
Well,
not
yeah,
that far.
you're EA, right?
Yeah, that's right. That's right. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, because EA, I don't know the community well, but I understand them to be basically like utilitarians, and anyone who's like steeped in that kind of community is going to be probably pretty utilitarian friendly. And I don't like not care about utility. Utility is like a massive important thing for me. And I will say that reducing suffering is an obligation for you, even if you're not causing it once the threshold is crazy enough. Like, for
Yes.
instance, if I can prevent all murder on Earth by like walking across the room right now and like pouring a glass of water, doing some like trivial action, I 100% am obligated to do that. So
Right.
I'm not gonna say that the like I guess I'm kind of carving out things that I will and won't say, but I don't know exactly. I can't give some like overall view. Well, I mean I could talk about. I do think my preferences roughly align with like threshold deontology because I guess we are just kind of getting at normative ethics at this point. But
Yeah.
yeah, I mean the point is just that like I'm not going to only say that negative things are obligations. I'm going to much more easily say that negative things are things about your own eliminating your own personal contribution to something bad. I'm
Yeah.
going to be way quicker to call those kind of things obligations than doing stuff to fix what other people are doing that are wrong. But if the gap, if the equation of like how easy it is to stop it and how bad it is, if those things are like dialed in right, then I will start calling things obligations that you are not personally doing because it's just like what kind of an asshole wouldn't end fucking like
Hmm.
cancer if they could do it by like taking a breath of air? Like
Yeah.
obviously you're obliged to fucking take the breath of air, right?
Yeah. Yeah. That's interesting because it does get so. There's like a version of the trolley problem in here, isn't there? Where you flick the switch at a certain point and kill the one person and save the five people. What's your intuitions on that kind of exercise?
Depends how many people.
Where's the line?
So at the low level, do you know what I rough yeah, well, I don't think I need an answer to that. Do you understand roughly what threshold deontology is?
Yes, I do. I've heard you talking about it, and in particular, I remember you talking to Vorsh about it, and kind of coming to it almost ends up at the same thing as rule utilitarianism, kind of from a different direction, right?
Well, they're distinct views. They could seem similar, but they're not the same. On well, let's just talk about what threshold ontology is roughly. So just to be clear, I like at a meta-ethical level, as you've noted earlier, excuse me, I'm an anti-realist. So these normative systems, I think, really all they are generalizations about the kind of preferences we have. And I think the best generalization that I've come across is threshold deontology. I don't know that it's perfect. Yeah, the view is roughly there's like some deontic concerns, whatever those might be exactly. Maybe it's like about autonomy or I don't know. I care a lot about like freedom. Um, I think really a lot of it is about just not being fucked with. Like I feel kind of like libertarian about it. So I don't know. There's some deontic values there though, whatever exactly they are. We know they're not utilitarian basically, but
Hmm.
um, I will. And this is also what differentiates it from rural utilitarianism. Um, I will even in a case where utility is maximized by some action if that action comes up against one of the deontic things I care about, however exactly you formulate them,
Hmm.
I will have a preference to not do the thing. So, for instance, the trolley case, when you have, it's like maybe 2 to 1, 5 to 1. Absolutely no, it's not okay to flip it to just murder some guy. That's fucking completely insane as far as I'm concerned. But if it's a million or trivially if it's a googleplex,
Hmm.
obviously at some point it's like yeah, I mean it's kind of crazy to not like you got to sacrifice that person. There's too many people who will die if you honor their like personal autonomy or liberty or whatever it is exactly you're caring about there. And like the connection to rule utilitarianism, um rule utilitarianism, basically the idea is that there's rules that if you follow them overall the effect will be to maximize utility, but locally they seem like sometimes not utility maximizing or something like that. Like there's rules like do not kill, and it's not like we might accept that kind of rule, but with the rule utilitarian, if you really dial in everything and you say, yeah, it's logically impossible for this to have any cascading negative consequences, like everything, no one ever finds out, blah 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 blah. Should the rapist rape the woman who doesn't find out about it? The rule utilitarian, once there's no basis to honor the rule because the rule is no longer tied to utility in the hypothetical. You just get more utility out of not following it. Well, now you're not committed to the rule. So you can generate cases where threshold deontology and rule utilitarianism will give different answers. Like the case of rape, for instance. There's a rapist who gets pleasure out of rape. If you have a problem with rape, then you're going to look at the utilitarian, the rule utilitarian, whatever, whoever's the threshold deontologist is going to look at that, and they're assuming they have a deontic concern for like something that involves rape, basically.
Sure.
They are going to say, no, it's not okay. Even if she's passed out, even if she never finds out, dial in whatever things you want, such that this rape like maximizes utility for the rapist. It's just not okay to rape. Rape is bad. The rule utilitarian might say, yeah, of course rape is bad. If we allow rape, then like, you'd have people like scared to go out at night. You'd have like, you'd have a lot of resentment and apprehension in the society. Like they'd point out all these bad consequences. But then if you say to them, okay, all those consequences that are the basis for your rule, in this hypothetical, they're not the case. Now is it okay to rape? Not only is it okay now, it's good for them, right? But the threshold deontologist is just going to say, no, rape, not good. Don't rape.
Yeah, so I think, starting with not being fucked with, I think is a pretty strong point then. It does seem like you could
Yeah.
kind of get to the Googleplex people on the other track in the case of like vegan activism. Is there something about action versus inaction here? Like, are any actions going to be obligatory, or are you only thinking of that in a sense you're obliged to not do things?
No, remember my example with the water, where it's not like
Right. Okay.
like
Yeah.
you're obliged to go and pour the water or take the breath of
Hmm.
air because it's like the no, ratio. It's just you have two inputs. You have how fucking much suffering you reduce, and you have how easy the thing is. And if
Yeah.
you make the former large enough and the smaller small enough, then you start looking like a complete fucking absolute lunatic if you don't say, yeah, that thing is obligatory. Whatever exactly we mean by obligatory.
Hmm. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
no,
Yeah.
I am quicker to call negative things obligations, but I do think there are positive obligations. Those are some kind of trivial examples we can generate in like a thought experiment.
Yeah, that's interesting. So if somebody was sufficiently good at doing vegan activism, such that there's all these, millions of animals that are going to be saved if they are not doing it, I guess you could say, well, the activism still might be a lot of effort, right? Which is relevant here, right?
Yeah.
You're gonna, the ratio, I think, is
Yeah.
the correct way of thinking about it.
Yeah. But you tip that ratio enough, yes, it's an obligation for them to do veganism. Again, whatever exactly we mean by obligation.
Yeah, you might be near
Do
that
activism,
threshold,
sorry.
buddy. You've got 20K subs over here. You might be obliged to start giving them something again.
Well, you know my view. I actually wish that I had the uh, time to be doing that, but I literally just can't. I'm not in a financial position where
Yeah,
it's
yeah.
a thing I can do. So I'm doing this degree right now that eats up all my time. I'm working on building up some business stuff because it's just yeah, it's I don't this is a whole other talk. We could get into this, but I don't want to go too off the rails. I've been sustaining working on this code and all this stuff related to Ask Yourself behind the scenes for like quite a while. Like there's tens of thousands of lines of code. There's so much stuff. I've been working my ass off, but there's just, and I know you've tried to help with this by helping me with the funding thing, and that's a whole story. But it's just so much work, and I'm realizing that I'm getting like absolutely, this connects to burnout, I guess, but I'm just ground to the bone. There's nothing in me. I can't
Yeah.
do it. And it's really purely financial. If I had money, it would be a non-issue. I'd be making a ton of content. It really is that simple. If you economically oppress a person sufficiently, there's some point where like they're
Of
just not
course.
going to be able to be productive in those ways, and that's basically where I'm at. So yes, if you are sad to see a project like Ask Yourself sort of end up on its last legs or like effectively dead, like it's only ever really going to get resurrected if I get some of this business stuff going and can get into a better financial position.
Yeah.
Um, but if you don't like seeing that kind of thing, you should have a problem with our economic system, and you should want something like UBI. You should want something like some kind of subsidies or some kind of encouragement for people who are doing intellectual or creative or ethical, moral kind of work. I think the fact that our society doesn't provide those things and that people just have to find some way to also have money at the same time, then burn whatever remaining free time they have on these things, and if they don't want to do all that other stuff that totally eats up all their time and destroys their motivation, leaving them with like nothing left in them except to like relax at the end of the day, then they get thrown, literally, this is our society, thrown on the street to die.
Right.
That's where we're at right now as a society. So that's all just deeply disgusting, and if you don't like that and you wish people like me were able to do more, yeah, you should want something like fucking UBI so that we're not in that trade-off.
Interesting. Interesting. Does the were you not making money off of your YouTube channel?
I was making money. Like it depends what point you're talking about. There's a point where I was making a living off of it.
Nice.
But especially when I went to school, and well, I don't know how
Just
much
took
I
up
want
a
to
lot
get
of your
into it,
time.
but
Yeah. 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 Get into it. Yeah.
that, that's led to a huge decrease in content output. And there's some people who, I mean, maybe they're kind of crazy, but they've just stayed the whole time and just patroned. And I know some of them, and I appreciate them,
Nice.
and that has made things a bit easier. But what was it that you asked? School? What? I forgot the exact question.
Uh, but were you not making money from your YouTube channel? Because it seemed,
Oh,
yeah.
oh yeah, no, sorry. So I was making enough to get by, though it would kind of fluctuate. And one time I had a big fluctuation where I was like, what the fuck? Now I can't have rent. I was like fine
Right.
last month, and now I'm just like annihilated. So yeah, just basically the whole reason I initially went to school was because I was like, well, it was basically I really liked the YouTube. I liked having my time free. I liked to be able to focus on intellectual and creative stuff. I my output was high. I was doing a lot. Um, but I didn't like that it wasn't much money. It's like you got enough, but it's kind of inconsistent, and so like it was good for a long time, but sometimes it would blip, and I'd be like, oh, what the fuck? And then also also just knowing seeing like having my stuff censored and having videos taken down and seeing it happen to others, seeing channels deleted, and realizing really that YouTube is just this like unaccountable black box where you can have your life ruined by someone whose face you never see and who's never with no recourse, and where they're never held to account or anything, totally arbitrarily. That I was like, okay, well, this is just irrational to do this. I need to like, what happens if that happens? I go work at a fucking fast food restaurant. I need to actually
Yeah.
have valuable skill sets. So that was like the whole original reason. Well, not the whole. There's other reasons, but it was like basically why I stepped away from it in the first place. Yeah.
Yeah. That makes sense. Um. Yeah. I do have a feeling there would be a tragedy if, when you finish school, you went into some office job or whatever else you might do.
Oh, I wouldn't. I would never do that. I literally would sooner commit suicide. I see no,
Okay.
I mean, look, lots of people have the psychology where they can do that and that would work for them. I would hate my life and want to die. It would, like, I have the skill set. I have a software engineering degree. I'm doing a master's in computer science right now. Like, I
Yeah.
mean, there's jobs out there. I have absolutely no interest in any of it. So for me, it's just, it's the real pathway is like social media stuff and YouTube and all that. That is a thing of passion, and maybe eventually I'll get money from that. But trying to cobble that together to make money in this it's just fucked, and I don't want to do that. The path for me is I need to get to some form of like self sustenance and some kind of something like passive or near passive income, which I know that's a bit of a meme term, but it is actually very achievable with some computing and programming knowledge. And I have some kind of schemes in the work. And then when I can have a proper money generating thing, I will naturally gravitate back to making content. Again, the barrier is just financial. It's not desire. I have the impulse to make videos all the time. Sometimes it's enough that I sit down and do it if my schedule is free enough and I'm annoyed enough. Like I made one on Alex a little while ago
Yeah.
because
I
I
was
was
gonna
just so
watch that.
retarded.
Yeah.
It was frustrating. Yeah, but most things don't clear that threshold. So yeah, I mean, it's just purely financial. If the financial stuff is at some point resolved, which I think I can get it into that state. I think it's just going to take a few years. Naturally, once I have free time, I will just be making content and doing all the things I like to do when I have free time, making music, So I don't think I don't know what to say. You should. It's not like I'm gone. I just need to get into a better position. I likely will. It's just going to take a while. So
That's
yeah.
cool. That's cool. I'm sure people would be glad to see you back. I mean, it feels like
Yeah.
we were speaking a bit about grant funding for your platform. It feels like it would be a worthwhile investment for uh, activism funders, vegan funders, to more or less pay you to do YouTube.
Oh, I mean, I totally agree. I think my content's valuable. I think that if someone wants to benefactor that shit, I could do a lot. But also, I'm not really comfortable with that because
You'd end up
benefactor
having to have
is
certain targets. You've got to publish a certain amount of videos per week and stuff like that.
oh that would be well a certain amount of content like at a yearly level or something like that. What like there are like very small kind of constraints that I'd be okay with, but basically once there's any significant constraint, I lose interest even if the
Yeah.
money's good. Same kind of thing that happens with the CS work. Um, and there's one other thing I was going to say about funding. Oh yeah, it's the same problem though. Like you need to be self-sufficient. If like the what if the benefactor for whatever reason decides not to benefact anymore? Like now I'm just back to the same position, right? So you can't be relying on people like that. So for me it's very much about like self-sufficiency. And I think there's a pathway to self-sufficiency that's not the corporate road. Again, that's the like stable road where like you can yeah, like look, if I want to just get into a position where I have some income and my income is steadily climbing, there's a very straightforward path. It's like pick one of the many areas of CS I could go into. The one I know the most about is programming, but I could also do cybersecurity. I could do networking. There's a whole ton of things, sysadmin, whatever. Then right now the market's bad, but basically mass spam applications. Eventually you'll get a hook somewhere. Once you get your foot in the door, do work, excel within that domain, get either promoted or leverage your prior experience there to climb the chain at other jobs. And then, within a few years of really hard, dedicated work, you're in a position where you have like a pretty solid tech job. You're making six figures. You're good. Absolutely no interest. Would sooner kill myself. No chance. Not happening. For me, I could explain why I don't like those things to some extent, but it's just not for me. It's not going to work.
I'm certainly
For
interested to
me,
hear your
there's a
views on why you don't like it. It seems to be a lot about the restriction of autonomy, right? You hate the idea of your boss saying, get this done by Friday or whatever it may be.
That's a big part of it. I'll just say one other thing about it before you can re-prompt me to talk about why if you
Hmm.
want, but I just want to say the other path though. So the one path that's the stable path, and that's most people. And I also want to be really clear about this. I am not shitting on people on that path. Like you don't hear. I mean, I might sometimes say it as a meme, words like wagey or something like that.
Right.
I actually don't know if I've ever said that word, but there might be things I've said that are like memey. But in reality, I totally respect people who do those things. I don't think there's anything. I mean, it's what makes the world go round. There's like
Absolutely.
it's valuable, incredibly valuable, but it's also just not psychologically going to work for me.
Hmm.
The other path though is it's a little more fucked. So that's the path that a lot of people go down in tech. Something like the kind of thing I just talked about. Um, and that path is tried and true, and it's reliable and stable basically. Well, if there's CS people who can't get fucking jobs in the comments or whatever, I don't know, but that's like the more stable path at least. There is another path though. The other path is to build something yourself. So it's to do the entrepreneurial thing.
Hmm.
And that path is sketchier because at the outset, you have to front load a ton of work to get things up and running, and you have no funding really while you do that. And it's kind of more of a crapshoot. You don't really know exactly where you're going to end up. But if you get it working, life is just, from my point of view, given my values, infinitely better. I don't have my hours committed to some thing I don't care about. I'm not forced to put my attention on things I don't care about. I just have my money that comes in, It sustains me. I can focus on what actually matters to me. If what matters to me is getting more money, I can put money in. I can put time into building up more of my systems that generate money. If what matters to me is doing creative expression, I can do that. And also, the ceiling is higher. When you work for someone, there's basically always a lower ceiling. Like, you, even the kind of unicorn special tech jobs where you're getting like, 500,000 or something. Like, if you are one of those special people, it still doesn't compare to just running your own business where you can start making millions of dollars if it takes
Right.
off, right? So yeah, and then to answer you, because I do remember your thing now. I was worried I wouldn't, so I said you could reprompt me. But it's, I don't know if I can name them all off. Like, obviously, whenever you have a big list of things, you have to name them all. You can't really do that unless you've written it down. But I can say some. Yeah, I mean, I basically, I mean, there's a core kind of pattern to it. I think people really don't understand what intellectual and creative work is like. It's work that requires a lot of percolation. So you just, a lot of time just sitting around and thinking and
Mm.
stewing. And I find, maybe this kind of ADHD thing, I'm not sure, but I find once you throw some shit into my day, any significant amount of hours doing something that I don't actually care about, it just drains my psychology to an insane degree. It
Yeah.
feels like a form of torture while I'm
Hmm.
doing it. And when I'm done, I have no motivation to do anything. I need to basically decompress. And I can decompress. And then eventually, once I have decompressed, I'm like, okay, I'm back to feeling normal. Now I can, do creative. I can do into, oh, it's time to go to bed and get up and do it again. And so
Right.
there's just this kind of, basically, even if the thing itself, the work doesn't eat up my whole day, the recovery from the work demolishes any possibility of doing anything creative at all. So it's kind of like I can't be myself. I can't live the life that I want to live. Like, a good life for me is like get up early in the morning, work out, meditate, drink a smoothie, and then there's a whole range of things that I like that matter to me, that are valuable, like playing music, making content, learning about concepts, reading, spending time with friends. There's more. They're not all on the top of my mind right now, but there's a bunch of these things that I think of as like deathbed safe activities, like the kind of activities that when you're on your deathbed, if you reflect and you ask, like, did I spend my time well? If your time was filled with those things, the answer will be yes. So
Yeah.
there's a bunch of those things, and then basically once I'm done my morning shit, it's just that for the rest of the day. Then at some point, I work better in the middle of the day. I burn out a bit at night. Once my energy burns out a bit, go see some friends, get some supper, go to bed, wake up, do it again. And I end up doing something that is very close to, or maybe more in many cases, hours, than to full time work. But
Right.
it arises kind of naturally because you put me in the right conditions where I'm naturally productive. So it's sort of like knowing that that is the kind of life that I need to be in. It's not necessarily a wealthy life, but just a life where I'm facilitated enough to do the not particularly financially demanding things, but the things that I care about, and to be saving some money as a buffer for any like real negative stuff that might happen in my life or to someone I care about. That's the kind of life that I actually value having. And that just, it doesn't seem like I get there if I go the corporate road. I don't see how it happens.
No.
I'd rather be poor and struggling than have money and have my time wasted, because my time is actually more valuable to me than, like, literally more valuable to me than the money. I would rather make just enough for food and other necessities like dentist or whatever, and have my time free, than make like like $500,000 a year. That's a very high salary. Most people in tech are not going to get that. But then make even the top tech salary and work a 9 to 5, or have any significant amount of my hours committed to something I don't care about. And it's not like a choice. It's not even like a thing to ponder. It's like a obvious answer to me. It's like, of course I don't care about that.
Yeah. Dude, I
Yeah.
identify with what you're saying so much.
Oh,
As you know, I now
cool.
run a vegan research company, and it is, not a flex. It's every bit as fulfilling as I hoped that it would be, right? And I
Good.
have, I get to work on all sorts of different projects that are intellectually challenging, and I care about the outcome of them, and I do have like a
Mm.
good degree of control over how my day. I can go to the gym in the middle of the day if I want to, if I don't have meetings, right? And that is,
Hmm.
I mean, I've honestly, I feel really grateful every day for my work life. Um,
Great.
and I had the experience beforehand. I interned at Bloomberg before. How I did my undergraduate degree was in business, and then I went and did this internship at Bloomberg, and I had this sort of
Right.
looking down the barrel of the life that I could have had if I had gone that route. And
Yep.
I did hate every minute of that internship, I have to say.
Yep. Yeah, I'm really happy for you. Like one thing
Thank you,
that
dude.
that that I try to do, um, I don't want to be resentful of people who have achieved the good stuff.
I
I don't
think
actually feel much impulse to
you're
be
gonna
resentful
yet
of it.
achieve all that though. You're
I
doing
think,
your degree at the
hope
moment.
so.
I hope so. I hope so too. Yeah,
Well,
and I think it's there for you if you want it. I mean, it's easy to say,
I
isn't it? But
I think so. I think so too. I appreciate that. But I know, like when I hear someone else has achieved it, it's encouraging, and it's like it's great. You know, someone carved out their own thing in the world, and they're truly happy doing it, and it's good for the world. I mean, that's great. I'm happy for you, and I'm happy for the positive effect that that has.
thank you, dude. Yeah, and I will say as well, it wasn't a given. 7 years ago or whatever, when I was still doing my PhD, I probably just thought like, I guess I'll eventually finish the PhD and then go work at Bloomberg. I swear, right? Like I
Right.
didn't dare dream that I could, keep on doing stuff that I care about to such an extent and so on. So yeah, it's totally possible. And I mean, I think I'm sure that you have far greater insight into this than I do, but there must be all sorts of ways to leverage your position, your degree of internet celebrity that you have. We were watching earlier a video about why you should start a YouTube channel in 2025, and from someone called Vegan Gaze, and
Oh
uh,
yeah.
yeah, do you know her?
A
And
little bit. I don't know her well, but that's Ellie. We've talked like a handful of times. She's always been nice to me.
right, yeah. And one of the things that she mentioned was you get discovered and you get other opportunities and you get people,
Yes.
yeah, coming and join your Discord server, offering you jobs or whatever it may be, right? So it's really, really good
Yep.
to have that advert for yourself out there.
Well, as you know, like for the last few years, again, like I stopped to ask yourself stuff. First largely for school to get into better positions, so I don't have the fear of getting annihilated by an unaccountable YouTube person. So my output dropped, but then I learned the coding stuff and I started building up a whole shit ton of code, right? So for ask yourself stuff, there's a lot of cool shit that I've built. Um, so I do think that there's a pathway to using like social media and all that stuff to make a living. Like I actually think that if I just had the time and funding, that I probably could make that path work. But
Mm.
that was the path that was too difficult in the meantime, and I don't know exactly how to say this. But I haven't thought of how to articulate this, but like that just ground me down, and I so I think it's possible, but I want to do something more stable for the basic layer of income and then return to it rather than trying to work towards making that work. Because even though I think it could work, it's going to be like a process. There's still a lot of
Yeah.
code that I have to produce, and there's a lot of stuff I have to do to get it rolling. But there's other things that I could do that could start generating reasonable money a lot faster. And when I look at the pathway of trying to parallelize working on, okay, I actually can explain it. Yeah, when I look at the pathway of trying to parallelize ask yourself stuff, develop doing all this dev stuff I'm doing with doing the master's degree and just the rest of life in general, that seems achievable, but like a longer pathway than first setting up another thing for income to just escape the rat race and the bullshit, and then going back to ask yourself, like, yeah, that'll delay me by a bit, but then I'm just free to focus on it. So not only will I have more fun working on it, I just it
You'll have
seems
more freedom
overall
in the
like
way you
the
interact with it.
the better
Yeah.
path.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's not that what you just said there about being able to use social media and stuff like that to make money is false. I think that path could work out. I just think that the more strategically optimal thing, which I won't get into the exact stuff that I'm getting up to, but the more strategically optimal thing is first get a thing that generates a lot of near passive money, then come back to it, rather than just try to hammer through with that until it generates enough money. I think eventually I'll have it up and generating money regardless, but yeah, you understand what I'm
Yeah,
saying here,
yeah,
right?
100%. No, that makes sense.
Yeah.
That makes sense. I really identified what you said about having one thing in your day that you don't particularly want to do, and then that's going to throw you off. I try and put all
Yeah.
of my meetings on a Monday or a Thursday, and then apart from that, I have normally 3 out of 5 days in a week where I don't have any meetings, which is great. I work from home as well, so I'm really just right. Um,
Nice.
and that
That's
is
great.
if I end up with a day where I have like, oh, someone couldn't do the Thursday, I had to meet them on the Wednesday, I'll really, you know, rather than having the clear day, I'm like, I've got that call at 12 o'clock. That's only 3 hours away. Do you know what I mean? And then it ends up being the whole
Mhm.
day. And I hope that
Yeah.
this call isn't that for you, because I know this is like
Oh no,
afternoon.
this yeah, excuse me, sorry, I got the hiccups, but yeah, that's this. No, I mean, well, I'm glad this is on Tuesday, right? So this isn't one of your
That's
work
right. Yeah,
scheduling call days. So
I'm
I'm
furious.
glad I'm not in that
No, I'm
category.
just kidding.
No, I mean stuff like this. I mean, I've told you I actually would just do calls like this for free, just because it's like, there's a limitation on my time, but when it's like a vegan activist or someone in the vegan space and they want to do some kind of thing, I'll often clear time for that. Um, but it's no, it's not like I mean, I wouldn't class it as labor. You've just like insisted on paying me, which I appreciate.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah,
But I would. This is actually something I would do. I would do anyway, at least often. I mean, school might kind of fuck with that to some extent, but it's because it's easy enough, right? It's like it's just I don't have to do a bunch of research and stuff for it. It's an enjoyable conversation.
yeah.
So and
Talking
it
about
does
vegan ideas.
some
Yeah,
vegan stuff. Yeah.
exactly. Yeah. No,
Yeah, and
I'm
you have
pleased to.
good questions that are, yeah.
Oh, good. I'm glad. Yeah. Do you know what? I listened to the Sam Harris podcast. You like that, Sam Harris?
Overall, yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, there's some things that he's kind of fucked on, but yeah.
Yeah, he started doing ones where um, a lot of his episodes are like him interviewing someone, and that's kind of interesting. But he
Mhm.
started doing them, which is his producer, I guess, interviewing him mainly,
Oh yeah.
which is actually kind of
Yeah, I've
more
seen those, yeah.
interesting. Yeah, that's good, don't you think?
Um I don't know if I have a preference for one over the other, but I don't have any problem with that format. Like those can be interesting, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I think of that similar to this. I like the opportunity to talk to you and kind of draw out some of your ideas in a format that, like, you wouldn't necessarily have made a video about. Is it obligatory or whatever?
Sure.
But we've kind of got your ideas about that out there now, which is cool.
Well, those ideas are pretty half baked, but yeah.
Yeah, I guess.
Yeah, no, I understand that. That makes sense.
Yeah, yeah. So I'm pleased to be a platform for getting your ideas out there in the meantime before you come back around to ask yourself.
Yeah, well, give it time. I'll get there. But yeah, no, I mean, I appreciate it. Yeah, it's like it's a fun conversation. I like thinking about these things. Sometimes you ask things that I don't really think about or have much to say about, but you also ask a lot of things I do have stuff to say about, and it's fun to explore regardless. Not everything has to be a like super polished, like here's like my fucking magnum opus on X topic. Sometimes it can just be more chill.
Sure, and I will say this: like usually when you hear this kind of like podcast style conversation, if you could call it that, you're hearing somebody being brought on because they're going to talk about a specific topic that's their life's work, and so they're very like, obviously I know what to say about this and so on. Whereas I'm
Right.
coming with some questions that I think you might have answers to, and sometimes you go, I never thought about that before, and that's is a different style of conversation,
Yeah.
isn't it?
Yeah, it's interesting though. It's a cool format to do a little bit of that because yeah, there's a lot of things I'll just never make a video about because I don't care enough about or I don't really have strong opinions on them. But if someone else gets some value out of hearing what I think about it, I mean, I guess it's a little hard for me to see the value because I like see the value more in the things I put a lot of thought time into. But if other people are saying something's valuable to them, then it's fair enough. If it's valuable to them and if it's fun to me, why not do it?
Yeah, yeah, for sure. Um, hey, we're over the hour, we're quarter past the hour already. I have one more
And
thing that we
notice
could
that.
discuss.
Yeah, well,
I don't know how pressed for
let's do
time we
that
are.
one other topic and then call it there. Yeah.
Okay, nice. So I think this might be an easy one for you, but I've just been like coming up against the idea of quote unquote emotional arguments and thinking,
Hmm.
is that a valid thing? I mean, people say this about animal issues, right? And the implication is, if you were less emotional and more rational, then you would not care about animals because that's just, you're having an emotional reaction to that, and therefore that's emotional, and therefore that's not rational. But I don't. That's not right, is it?
Well, there's something weird about putting emotional and rational in opposition to each other. Those aren't
Hmm.
like antonyms, right? You could, I mean, the first half of it is true, which is if you have no fucking emotion, well, I forget how you phrased it, but you're probably not going to care about veganism.
Right.
But that's not like because there's a sliding scale from emotion to reason, and you've like moved towards reason. Like you could,
That's how a lot of people appear to think about it. Like, do you have that
why
same?
can't you be highly reasonable and also care? Like, isn't that kind of an
Right.
obvious place that you could end up?
Yeah.
That's where I think the best people end up.
It seems to me that it would be. And then the thing I think is there's an awful lot then taken for granted in anything else that we might care about. Like, why do we want to stop climate change or reduce crime or obesity or anything? Like, it's always going to ultimately cash out in, like, those things make us feel bad on some level, right?
Oh, okay. Well, wait. There's different kinds of questions you can ask here. So there's one question of like, if you move from being more emotional to more rational, are you less likely to care about veganism? And it's like, yes, but in virtue of becoming less emotional, like not in virtue of becoming more rational.
Right, right.
Because if you, yeah, so that's kind of misleading because it makes it seem like the people who are able to really apply reason just don't care about animals. Like, why the fuck would I think something like that? But
Hmm.
there's a separate kind of question, which the thing you just said sounded a bit um, more in line with associated with whatever, and that's more like, is there something wrong with, in some sense, appealing to emotion?
Mm.
And I mean,
Yes, that's more what I
we
mean.
we
Yeah.
just have to be, yeah, I mean, we just have to be clear about what we mean. Like, there's senses where obviously not. Like, I mean, there's tons of arguments that I could make that are just sound logical arguments that start with a proposition that's something about your values or what you care about. Like,
Right.
you know, if you prefer not to see sentient beings stabbed to death and all else held constant, this action increases the amount of sentient beings that are stabbed to death, then you'll have, to like the same A4TR argument, to the degree that you have a preference against the death stabbing, you have a preference against this action. Like, I mean, you can make that all formally valid and set it up nicely. But the point is just that you can build tons of arguments that are perfectly sound and that have a premise in them that's about values. In fact, how the fuck do you ever make an argument about values ever if you can't do that? Because then
Right.
you're talking about crossing the Azot gap.
Right. Right. Yes. So
Right?
any,
How do you
yeah.
start from premises like the world is exists and animals suffer, therefore you ought be like, you have to have a value thing in the premises to be able to get to the conclusion. You also have to have like, it's bad to to do so and so.
Yeah.
So no, if so, it depends what we mean. But there's also there's other things that might be called an appeal to emotion that are fallacious. I'm trying to think of like an example. Like, well, I guess there's like appealing to consequence where there's, I guess it's not necessarily an appeal to consequence. You might be some of these fallacies like butt up against each other.
Interesting.
But you could have a case where like you you say that I don't know, you like try to imply that something is false because one has a particular emotional reaction to it or something. Like you are grossed out by, I don't know, like like, I don't know exactly how to set it up, but the point is you could set up something where it's not like it's not that the emotional thing is not connected in any meaningful logical way to what's going on. Like, how do they define the fallacy? Because they define it in a way that's kind of retarded and, one sec, appeal to emotion, and where it just like sounds like it's also saying that making arguments that start with values is bad. Argument to emotion is an informal fallacy characterized by manipulation of the recipient's emotions in order to win an argument. Like, what the? Yeah, that's kind of vague, especially in the absence of factual evidence. Um,
Manipulation of
yeah, I could
emotions.
kind
Right.
of see this, like for instance, leveraging the fact that someone is like scared of something to make them think that it's false that that thing is good for you, maybe with like the vaccines or something like that,
Mm.
that could fall under this sort of description, because like the factual evidence isn't there, and you're sort of trying to leverage their emotions in the absence of evidence to get them to some sort of conclusion. um yeah, I mean, that sounds like certainly in a lot of cases it could be problematic. So it's just one of these things where like you have to understand with the informal fallacies. Like there's the different fallacies, right? There's the formal ones and the informal ones. The formal ones are all just about logical structure, so they're just kind of like trivial facts about how inference works.
Mhm.
But the informal ones are all like kind of gritty, like human language, like
Mm.
hard to, some of them are hard to exactly characterize. So I think sometimes they get defined in a way where it's like, oh, well, I can picture a case of this that are actually good, or like I can, and you kind of have to tease out the right way to represent it. But anyway, hopefully I gave enough example that it's kind of like, okay, there's obviously cases where emotions come up in arguments, and there's nothing wrong with that. In fact, you have to do that to make certain kinds of arguments. You have to start from values, or else you're crossing the Azad gap. And then there's cases where it's not, where like, just to take one obvious case, like the facts don't support your view. You know someone is scared of a certain thing. You try to leverage their fear in some way to prompt them into believing something there's not evidence for. That seems like a fallacy.
Okay, yeah, that makes a lot of sense. That makes a lot of sense. So there is a legitimate, or rather, it's not illegitimate to appeal to emotion in one sense, or rather to like, I guess, like have a premise which includes some emotional evaluation or some preference evaluation. Um, and then the part where it would be, uh, I guess, dishonest or informally fallacious is if the um is the manipulation part, right? It's like the deception part to do with emotions. So I'm trying to think what that could be in the
Well,
case
yeah,
of like
yeah.
a vegan argument. It would be as if you were talking about animals, but actually you know that animals are not conscious and don't suffer, or something like that.
Oh, well, maybe someone's pushing back on veganism by showing that some particular action doesn't actually increase suffering on net, but then you're like focusing on one being who it does increase suffering for, and being like, look at how much they're suffering. Like
Right, right, right,
you
right,
should just
right.
accept that this thing is bad. It's like there's not actually evidence that the thing is overall bad on the relevant values. But there's
It's the
this
crop
thing that
deaths,
is
isn't it?
emotionally triggering. Yeah, that's a great example. Yeah, that is a good example. I think people get emotionally hijacked on that. They see a single animal or picture a single animal that suffers, and they're like, "I buy crop, animal dies. I am killing. I'm bad. Like I'm kind of just on the same spectrum as a carnist, but just lower." And yeah, I mean that just totally hijacks people's emotions. But yeah, you could make you could explicitly make some kind of invalid like appeal to emotion kind of thing to leverage that also. Yeah. So basically, just fallacies, they're not always perfectly defined. You have to carve out cases, but we just gave some like paradigm cases of things that clearly that might fall under appeal to emotion, but some clearly are acceptable and some clearly aren't. So with a lot of things with philosophy, you just have to be kind of clear about what concept you're using. Like, what's the notion of obligation we're using? What's the notion of appeal to emotion that we're using? And then once you get clearer about the concept, it's a bit easier to talk about which things fall under it or not. Because right now you look at that and it's like, it might be a little bit vague, and you might be able to picture with some of these fallacies some things that fall under them that don't actually seem fallacious. But you can kind of sift the wheat from the chaff, and try to you know what I mean.
I
Yeah.
know what you mean. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. It's in some cases it's legitimate, in some cases not. Yeah.
Yeah, and I just specifically, the definitions can be a bit vague, and it's not always totally obvious how to class the things just by looking at the definition. So sometimes you have to do a little interpretive work, and you have to go, okay, like obviously they're getting at something with appealing to emotion. Surely there's cases where that's bad, but also there's cases that's good. So let's like kind of tease out the two cases, and sort of get a sense of what kind of things work and what don't. Because the fallacy labels don't always give you a clear like universe cleaver where you can just split the universe in half, the things that are fallacious and aren't. Sometimes you got to
Right.
kind of do a bit of interpretive work, think about cases. Yeah.
Yeah, that makes sense. I appreciate that distinction for informal and formal fallacies as well. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah. I don't know. Do you have any thoughts on it before we? Those?
Well, I'll just bring up one thing before we stop. Someone in my
Sure.
chat said search for fallacy fork. Have you ever heard of this?
No, I haven't.
Yeah, the fallacy fork is a philosophical concept that suggests when a traditional formal fallacy is analysed, it either applies to a rare, strictly formal deduction with no real world application, or its application is so nuanced and context dependent that it's no longer a straightforward fallacy.
Oh, who sent that? That's based. Yeah, that person's got a nice little insight there. Yeah, that's the kind of thing I'm talking about. Yeah.
Yeah,
Exactly, because like you look at this and it's like, okay, well, what exactly do we mean with the informal fallacy? And like, if you make it rigid and precisify the whole thing, it's like, yeah, that's bad. But how is that not just some version of like an invalid argument or something? Like that's exactly the kind
right.
of thing that I'm thinking. Yeah. So
There you
yeah, that
go.
person
Vegan
is
2.0
based. Yeah,
versus
whoever
animal
that is.
abuse. Nailed it in my chat. Good for them. Base name
I
as well.
wonder who that is. I don't recognize the avatar, so I have no clue. But that's a good one there. Yeah.
Nice.
You want to end on that note then? That's a good note to end on,
I
I
think that's
think.
a good note to end on. Yeah, thanks for the chat, dude. Always nice to talk to you. I look forward to next time.
Yeah, man, of course, anytime. Good talking to you too. I look forward to whatever questions you have next time around.
All right, buddy. Take care.
Yeah, okay, peace out.
Cheers. Damn, well, I enjoyed that. I always enjoyed talking to Isaac. He's a real smart guy, and I am getting, really improving the clarity of my thought around a lot of these things from talking to him.